Imagine going to church, offering up your tithe, and then dying. This is what happened with Ananias and Sapphira, but why? Now, when we try to understand the story, we immediately go to Acts 5, but Acts 5 is not the beginning of the story because it's actually set up in the previous chapter. In Acts 4, Luke is describing the early church and what was going on within it. And in verse 34, he says, "For there was not a needy person among them, because all those who owned lands or houses sold them, brought the proceeds of what they had sold and laid it at the apostles' feet. And then the apostles distributed these funds to anybody who had need." Now, in verse 36, we're introduced to Barnabas, the same Barnabas that was Paul's traveling companion, whose original name was Joseph, who is a Levite from Cyprus by birth. And it says that he sold a field that he owned. He brought the money and laid it at the apostles' feet. Now, what the church is doing here is what the church is commanded to do, to take care of the least of these brothers and sisters of Jesus, to take care of those within the church, to make sure that they're fed, that they're clothed, that they don't go hungry. Now, one of the things that you'll notice about the book of Acts is that there are certain people that are called out that rise to prominence because of their faithfulness to the message of the gospel and to the church. We saw the example of Barnabas in Acts 4, but also in places like Acts 6, we see Stephen rise to prominence and chosen as a man full of faith in the Holy Spirit when there is a dispute about the distribution of food between Jews and Hellenistic Jews. It's a little backwards to the way that we do things typically within the Western church nowadays. Like if I were to ask you the question, how do you rise to prominence as a person within a congregation or within a church? It's usually, well, you got to preach really good. You got to talk really good. You got to go to seminary. You got to be best friends with the pastors or the leadership, or nepotism. You're the pastor's kid and you just kind of get granted into that. It's all about what you know, who you know, and how you can advertise your abilities to those in charge to be selected. However, in the early church, you were selected because of your faithfulness, because you were exhibiting the fruits of the Spirit. So Barnabas being called out here specifically by the apostles is actually a note in highlighting his faithfulness to the message of the gospel and to his faithfulness to the church. So enter in Ananias and Sapphira, who sell a piece of property. However, they don't give the entirety of the proceeds to the apostles. They keep back a part of the proceeds. So Peter, speaking to Ananias, says, "Why has Satan filled your heart to lie to the Holy Spirit and keep back part of the proceeds of the land? Wasn't it yours while you possessed it? And after it was sold, wasn't it at your disposal? Why is it that you planned this thing in your heart? You have not lied to people, but to God." So, two things about this particular passage. I have heard people